Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of our two broadcasts for the playoffs of the Zwift Racing League. Tonight, the ladies' teams will be taking on a team time trial, whereas the mixed teams will be trying to score as many points as possible on the Sand and Sequoias route. In the team time trial, the teams will be taking on a single lap of out and back again in Watopia. The route is 42.3 kilometres in length, and there's 333 metres of climbing to contend with. The riders will take in the desert before heading towards the Volcano KOM, then the hilly reverse KOM before finishing at the Fuego Flats sprint banner. Representing the herd in the TTT tonight, we have Little Penguins and Skipper Butterflies in Category B, and in Category C we have the Misfit Meerkats, Gen 2 Penguins, and the Mischievous Meerkats. I'll be following the Mischievous Meerkats initially, and they will have a 3-minute delay, which has already begun. So I'm joined by Zoe, Jodie, and Craig once again. Zoe, why don't you just talk us through the team time trial?
So the team time trial is basically everybody against the clock. And the fourth rider in your team, you ride together as a team, and the fourth rider in your team, when they finish, that's your time. So if you start off with 6 and you accidentally lose 2 along the way, very unfortunate, but the fourth one counts. If you start off with 4 and you lose one along the way, then you're in trouble. In this case, it's a nice, mostly flat course, but with a climb up the volcano and then another climb up the reverse con, which do provide a bit of a challenge for team time trials because it's really important to stay together.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think also if you've got quite a bit of a power or weight spread across the teams, that's generally easy to stay together on the flats. But if you do start hitting the hills, it can be harder to stay together, and that's where it's very important to have a good DS in the team to talk to all the riders to try and keep everyone together as best as they possibly can.
Yeah, the Littles have got Richard Hare as their DS for the second season now, I believe. And he's actually DS'd for me on my team on one of the Thursday team time trials. And he is superb, very calm, very clear in his instructions, what he wants you to do. And very tactical as well. So yeah, he knows those courses back to front.
We're still waiting for the Mischievous Meerkats to set off. See, the first teams are out on the road already, and these guys will be off. I think probably in the next minute because I think the first team set off after a time delay of 2 minutes. So just on that point, the way the team time trials are run in Zwift is everyone gets into the race pen. Each team is given their start delay. And once the timer and the pen hits 0, everyone sits tight, stops pedaling, and they wait until their allotted start time, and then off they go. And in this case, the Mischievous Meerkats have a start delay of 3 minutes, so we should see them setting off fairly shortly. Zoe, what teams have you taken part in with the team time trials, both in the Zwift Racing League and also in the Thursday team time trials?
So I've raced with the Lemurs in the Thursday time trials. That's a team that's a Vienna team, women's team, and with the Cougar Cubs last season in ZRL and the Galapagos Penguins. This season.
Go Penguins!
Go Penguins! And yes, those have been quite a lot of fun. The lemurs can be really, really fun. Usually is. It's an excellent lesson in how to run a team.
Yeah, no, the ride reports from the lemurs always look like good fun. Shortly after the race has gone off.
I confess that some of the things in the ride reports may not actually happen.
I can't believe that.
but obviously we haven't actually stolen crown jewels in a very real sense. I believe the mischievous meerkats have started.
They have indeed, and they are off and running straight into the desert. Yep, no, straight into the desert for the first part of this route, and we are pretty much 10 kilometers until we get to the roundabout at the end of Tempest Fugit. And after that, we will climb up the little 4 to 5% ramp that takes you towards Tempest Fugit. We'll carry on past the right-hand turn to. I don't mean Tempest Fugit. I mean Titan's Grove. You'll carry on past that right-hand turn and then head back into Main Watopia before heading the way to the Volcano KOM. All the way up to the top, down again, and then they'll head to the Heli KOM, which they'll do in the reverse direction, which is the longer one, which will involve a bit of a ramp to start with, peaking at around about 12%, before the rolling section, and then the very sharp descent before we turn right back towards the desert, where the finish line will be at the end of the Fuego Flats sprint. Jodie, are you seeing any action at the moment, or are we still sat tight in the pen waiting to set off?
We're sat tight watching Littles, but I've also got dual view on my screen, and I'm watching the mischievous meerkats at the same time. So one eye's doing one lot, and the other eye's doing the other lot. So I'm just watching what J-Ho of the mischievous meerkats is doing. Oh, we've changed to the misfit meerkats. They have now just set off from the pen.
How about you, Zoe? Still sat in the pen, or have we got some action?
Yeah, so I'm with the Gen 2s, who after last night are leading the playoffs. They won, as well as winning over the Chelsea winning overall. They are currently number one in the C's. But they have a 9-minute start, so they will be sitting around anxiously looking at their trainer connection and hoping they haven't disconnected from Zwift.
Yeah, one of the sad drawbacks of exercising using this technology is we're very, very reliant on connections using either Ant Plus or Bluetooth, which sadly there can occasionally be dropouts, and hopefully that won't happen tonight. I'm watching Karen McBride in the Mischievous Meerkats. They're 3 minutes in and about 1.5 kilometers onto the desert, and they are just starting. Well, they're just about to go past the start of a sprint line, which will then take us up to where the finish line will be tonight. One of the things we do tend to talk about quite a bit in team time trials is how best to run them. So the two main approaches are either blobbing, where you'll just ride together and sort of seamlessly move between the various positions, or the other approach is to try and do a pace line where you will have one person on the front doing a few more watts than everyone else behind, and the idea is that you have a perfect line to maximize the drafting for the riders behind. So basically you'll have one person who might do let's say 30 seconds at 3 watts a kilo, whereas the guys at the back might be doing 2 watts a kilo. So very, very key to maximise the drafting for the person who's just finished their pull on the front, so they get a little bit of a breather. Zoe, have you done sort of both different approaches, or anything else to add in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, so basically the trade-off is that the pace line is the fastest way to get around on the flats anyway. On the hills it matters a bit less, especially if they get steep, but it requires more skill and more organisation. Whereas the blob is easier to manage, and it's not so much worse that you can't do it. But you can do sort of hybrid models where you have a couple of people on the front of the blob deliberately doing the work and taking pulls, but the blob is kind of a little bit less ordered behind them. That can work quite well because it requires a bit less skill to do. It is quite hard to hold an exact pace line without overtaking each other all the time, and particularly it's a problem if you have somebody on the front doing, say 10% above their FTP, and somebody shoots past them and then tries to slow down, because they will slow down that front rider a bit with the sticky draft as they come back, and that can really slow you down.
And the little penguins have just set off. Watching Roxanne here, and I don't know what happened at the beginning there with her, but there was no power. Some weirdness going on. Her avatar wasn't pedaling. There was no power. She's really having to chase to catch them up, but she's there now. She's on the back with them. So I have no idea what happened there. I think she had some problem yesterday, didn't she?
I think we may have had the age-old commentator's curse by talking about potential dropouts before the race started. So,
oh, bless, yeah, probably.
so probably entirely our fault. But really glad to hear that she's back in there now. But not what you want at the start of the team time trial, having to push really, really hard just to join your teammates. The Mischievous Meerkats are 3.5 kilometres in. Just over 6 minutes have gone so far. So what should we talk about? One of the things if you are looking to do the genuine pace line, and we've touched on that already, is the amount of concentration that's involved. Now that might be okay at the start of a race, but you are having to put out VO2 plus efforts when you're doing your pull at the front, and it's certainly harder to concentrate the more tired you become further into a race. So generally it is easier on the flats. If you're looking to do pace lines on the hills, it's much harder, just because you're having to change your pace to adapt to the other riders in the course as well. But Mischievous, 4 kilometres through, 7 minutes gone, and they will get to around about 6 kilometres before we see the first meaningful ramp up of any elevation. Craig, haven't heard from you very much yet. What are you doing other than supplying us with these fantastic pictures?
So right now it is the pictures, and trying to keep that going properly. So that's where I'm seeing all the teams. All the teams are kicked out now with the Gen 2. Also, I think they had the longest wait time, and it looks like all the teams are sticking together quite well, and most of the teams did really well in grouping up at the beginning. I did notice I think it was the Meerkats and Junius had trouble getting on at the back. I don't know whether that was the sleepy trainer or what.
So it's looking like, just going back to our conversation about different ways to pace for TTT, it's looking like Mischievous are mainly looking to hold a blob, although having said that, they're just forming a little bit of a line right now. See, Carrie's holding 2 watts a kilo just off the front, and looking to pull along her teammates as we just do a couple of sort of pretty much U-turns with a ramp that will hit up to a max of around about 3% as we go past the waterfall. Zoe, what are you seeing right now?
So I'm seeing the Gen 2s. They got away quite smoothly. I had some weirdness where it looked like they were riding cross country, which is an unusual choice, but I suspect not one that they were seeing. They've got a sort of blob with one rider out in front, which is perhaps not an ideal formation, but they're just settling in now. They've gone with everyone with a different hat, which enables them to tell each other apart, which is quite useful, but it does make them look like they've just picked up the play costume box and grabbed stuff.
Well, I'm currently watching Claire from the Little Penguins. She's pulling on the front at the moment. Just been given a breather by Roseanne. They've just passed through Fuego Flats. They're now at 3.1 kilometres into the race, and they're doing a solid 40 kilometres an hour at the moment. I think they're trying to stay in paceline as much as possible, but as we mentioned previously, it's very difficult to try and get that perfect paceline going. They're managing it occasionally, and occasionally it is a beautiful thing to see. And then sometimes it just falls apart a little bit. I think mostly on the changeovers, actually.
Yeah, it's difficult to manage. But one of the key roles of the DS or team car is to basically talk to the riders, let them know when their pull is coming up, and they'll give them at least 30 seconds notice of that. And quite often it can be very nice to have a calm voice in your ear just to keep everything running properly. But obviously, different riders respond to different types of DS in different ways. Just quickly back to Mischievous. They are 6.5 kilometres through and 11 minutes into the race. They are past the waterfall, past the little downhill bit after that, and they are now starting to head towards the little oasis village, which is around about 9 kilometres before a roundabout and our climb up towards Titan's Grove. Zoe.
The Gen 2s are still powering through the desert. They're putting out pretty good watts. They're sort of doing it looks a bit like a paceline, but they're blobbing a bit occasionally as well, and pressing on towards. I think they're probably going to be at the Oasis not too long a time.
And just having a look at our YouTube setup at the moment, we've obviously got 4 teams. Can also see that the skippers are going along very nicely. I'm currently holding around about 43 kph, so cracking speeds there. They're 6 kilometres through after 9 minutes, which will give them an average of 40 kilometres an hour. So definitely setting a nice pace in their B category race. Mischievous are 7.5 in, just under 12.5 minutes, and definitely looks to have had a very nice start and look to be pacelining it quite nicely. I'm just looking at the small gaps behind. We will also be covering the mixed category points race tonight, which I know Craig will give us a little intro to in just over 10 minutes time. Or perhaps just under 10 minutes time, and we're looking forward to that as well. I think we'll probably see a little bit more action in the points race with individual riders looking to make attacks on the sprints and the climbs, whereas the TTT is essentially what's going to be mainly a threshold effort for the riders and slightly less action, but certainly great speeds throughout. Jodie, how are we doing?
I'm watching Teen at the moment. She's just dropped to the back of the paceline there. We're just passing through the Oasis. I was a little bit worried about them, the littles, for a moment there, because they seem to be losing time on the skippers, who were, they were gaining a second here, a second there, and now they've pulled that back a little bit, and they're holding steady. Skippers are 2 minutes 12 ahead of them, and they've got TBR Smile 50 seconds behind them at the moment. So TBR Smile are catching them a little bit, but nothing really to worry about at the moment. But there's I think the littles need to just try and push just that little bit harder if they can, just to sort of maintain or improve the gap to the skippers, because the skippers, again, they're pulling away from them. They're now at 2 minutes 15 ahead. So that's something that Richard probably has got an eye on, and is probably whispering to them in their ear.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of mischievous, they're just going through the little village before we have the roundabout and the climb up towards Titans. In terms of gaps, looks like BZR Bullets, I think they're BZR Bullets 2, have put about 15 seconds into them. So hopefully they're able to keep that steady. Um, BRT, the BRT team in front have a gap of around about 3 minutes. I'm not entirely sure whether or not they went off a minute or longer before the mischievous meerkats. But we'll certainly keep an eye on those gaps for now. Zoe, what are you seeing in terms of gaps?
So it looks like the Gen 2s are closing in a little bit on the BRT team ahead of them. This is not a complete surprise. There's only 4 people in the BRT team, the Candy Kittens, including Holly Bergin, who was H yesterday, if anybody was watching, who is a herd rider who also rides for BRT. And the chat can get a little competitive occasionally. I think one thing that we probably ought to mention is fatigue. All of these riders had a really hard race yesterday, and they're feeling it. There's sore legs around, and that points race is not very easy. And trying to turn around and race again the next day, it's a bit of a challenge, and it'll be a challenge for the mixed teams as well, coming off a team time trial, which is an hour and 9 minutes at threshold, and then trying to do a points race tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on, Craig.
No, it's a little interesting to look at the difference between the two orders, where the mixed teams did the team time trial first, and followed by the points race, whereas the women's did the opposite. So there's really no place to hide in the team time trial, but on the other hand, your strongest riders are not the ones that are usually taxed the most, because you're on your time is based on your 4th rider. So there's a interesting way to look at it. I have found the Misfit Meerkats, so they were the last ones to take off, not the Gen 2s, and so they are just hitting the Oasis now, and they're moving along. They're moving along well, and really, it looks like we're just a few minutes from cutting over to the points race, so we can get everything set up to cover the start there.
Yep, and one of the other things we can talk about in terms of fatigue, and in terms of which event you did yesterday. Obviously, for the slightly lower power riders, they will be at threshold for the whole way, whereas the stronger riders may be doing tempo. But in terms of having come from a points race, there's going to be very, very hard efforts. So you have the sprints and the climbs, and there may be quite a bit of recovery in between there. So as to who's going to be more tired before the 2 races start tonight, not entirely certain, but I'm sure there's definitely some fatigue in quite a few legs as we started today. And with the time trial, we touched on this yesterday. The first half is very flat, whereas you've got an 8 to 10, 11-minute climb with the volcano, which will certainly sap a few legs going up there. But Mischievous are past the roundabout. They passed the little climb going up to Titans, past the entrance to Titans, and then they've now gone downhill, and they are just about to hit main Watopia again. So 11k through, 19 minutes gone, doing really well. Jodie.
Oh, we're just coming up to 9.5 kilometres here, approaching Saddle Springs. So at 9.9 kilometres, they've got the Calder Saddle Springs, which is a 900 metre average 2% climb. So they're going to have to really watch out and stay together there, because that's it's not a steep climb, but it's one that could hurt the heavier riders and tire their legs out, whereas the lighter weight ones will be pushing, and they've got to really watch this to keep together. But they're doing a good job. They've just started. I can see on the mini map it's showing 3% at the moment, so they're doing well keeping together.
Great job so far from all the teams involved tonight. See, the skippers are still absolutely flying. They're almost 12 kilometres through after 17 minutes. And they are just heading into main Watopia as well. They are pretty much on identical distance to the Mischievous Meerkats, who are at 12.3 at the moment. They're through 20 minutes. Just going through a little bit of a downhill spot before we head towards the switchbacks, and then we'll head towards the volcano. We're not far away from the points race at all. I am just going to switch to the pen, and I'll be keeping an eye on herd mentality tonight and see how they get on. They are second in their group currently and hoping to try and score the win tonight with a good points haul. We'll see how they get on.
Okay, so I think we're at this point. We're wish good luck to the women and the remainder of the team time trial, and we'll move on to the points racing. So the points race, same as the women did yesterday, is on Sand and Sequoias. So they're the riders score points on the sprint and KOM segments as well as finish position. So they'll go through the sprint 3 times, once in the lead in, at the end of the first lap, and then come the final sprint up to the finish line, and doing 2 laps they'll go over the KOM twice. It's about 42.8 kilometers with just under 300 meters of climbing, and the power-ups, they've altered the typical power-ups, and we've moved to the anvil to go with the helmet and feather as opposed to the aero truck. So that is a bit of a difference. Definitely from what we saw yesterday in the women's race, it is a bit of an odd choice. There's really only one spot on the course where it is useful, right off the top of the of the KOM, and it's a pretty limited use power up for this course.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our riders have been basically saying if you get the anvil, dump it. On other words, get rid of a power up. Don't use it unless you happen to get it on the KOM banner. Whereas anywhere else in the course, you're going to want something else. Obviously, the helmet is great for sprints, and the feather is great for climbs. Whereas the anvil, it might give you 5 seconds going down the descent on the KOM, but it's not particularly useful. It's not really an attacking power up. It might help you stay with your group a little bit more, but it's certainly not been one of the most powerful ones, and we've definitely seen some very powerful power up choices across the Zwift Racing Leagues, particularly thinking of the Steamroller in I can't remember what the actual route was, Craig.
I believe that was Beach Island Loop.
Yep, that's one.
Yeah.
Where there's a slight incline, and I think it was as powerful as maybe 20 seconds. So that obviously made a big difference to that race. But I don't think we'll see anything like that in terms of the anvil tonight.
I don't think so. It's enough to either bridge back if you're just off the back coming over the KOM, or maybe to put in a little bit of an attack to lead into the rollers coming out of the rollers after the KOM, but it's a limited use, unfortunately.
I think if anybody doesn't know, what the anvil does is it increases your weight which makes you go downhill faster. Obviously, nobody ever wants to use the anvil on an uphill because that would be silly. But I have seen people drop it on, like just trying to get rid of it, or possibly hitting the space bar by mistake or something, and go backwards on climbs. So that's one of the reasons why you might want to dump it really quickly if you get it, particularly if you get it off the sprint, just because you could accidentally trigger it.
Also, it's worth noting that there are no 30-second descents in this route, whereas the anvil lasts 30 seconds. So even if you do use it on the descent after the KOM, yes, it will give you a little bit of benefit for maybe 15 seconds. But once you've stopped descending at any rate, then you're on the flats, and it's not going to be particularly helpful. The last thing you want to be doing is being heavier if you're on a flat part of a route, or even going up a roller. So, interesting choice. Perhaps Zwift looking to see if people do actually get any benefit out of it, or whether or not they just drop it straight away, realizing that it may not be particularly useful. Just to touch on herd mentality, they have just under 3 minutes to go before the start of a race. It's a good race course, especially with the sprints so early. Are people going to blow up? Is the front group going to get fragmented very, very quickly? Are people going to go for a panache breakaway very, very early on? All of these things will hopefully be revealed fairly shortly. But the KOM is, in terms of difficulty, one of the easier ones. I think averages around about 4%. And the first half of it is definitely probably more sort of 2 and 3. But if you're pushing big watts, it's still going to make a big difference. I did say herd mentality had 2 minutes to go, but actually they are off now. I can see Nathan Home putting out 600 watts to make sure he stays in the start of this field. And we do go into the sprint very, very quickly. I think it's about 1.8 kilometers from the start pen before that happens. So probably looking at only sort of 2.5 minutes in this C group before they hit that. So things get very exciting very, very quickly. And everyone will be looking to secure first over the line and fastest segment times as well, with the fastest segment times being over the 3 sprints that you do over the course of this race. But first over the line will be on each of the sprints and the KOMs. But yeah, no, we are straight into pushing pretty hard. Looks like Nathan's doing well over 3 watts a kilo at the moment, and will have been doing around about 6 out the pen at the start. We're just about to hit the loop before things get a little bit crazy. Jodie, who are you watching at the moment?
Kay Fisher, who appears to be going on a really interesting route. Yep, but she's back onto tarmac now. She was going cross country. I thought she was gravel riding. Some weirdness again at the start of this race for her. She's off and going now. It took a long time to get going. She's quite a way behind the pack. Big gap between her and Jay Behrens in front, who is 2 seconds ahead. And there are, people 10 seconds, 11 seconds ahead of her. So I have no idea what happened with her to start with. Maybe she had a dropout, but she's riding alone at the moment.
And how about you, Zoe?
So I'm with Nikki Sesh of the herd of Fighting Frisians. She's currently sitting 37th. There's a bit of a gap ahead of her. It gapped on just that little 1%. And she's clearly working to try to get back on. But the front group is pretty big, and I suspect they're going to go away, unfortunately. So she'll have to form up a group and try and chase them down.
C's are just hitting the sprint at the moment. Nate is currently holding 4 watts a kilo. So many different ways to take on the sprint. Do you go all out early on and then just try and hold on to the pace. But a lot of it will depend on what's going on in here. As Nate pumps up to 8 watts a kilo now, there are 9s and 10s all around him. See quite a few herd jerseys in here. And they are just coming up towards the cavern, which contains the final sprint banner, and they're still holding 700 watts going through the line round about now. Just seeing, waiting for the update to the sprint leaderboard if it comes through, which it may well not do as I'm fan viewing. But Nate's still in the front group, currently holding 14th wheel. The field behind looks very, very spread out, but Nate's just coming back into the front group, which splits a little bit, and we'll definitely have a few less numbers than we did just about a minute ago. Craig, are you finding people, or are you watching someone?
I am finding people. I've got Eric Newart of the herd of charging coursers. He has gone very early and is attempting to break away on the sprint. See how this goes for him. He is maintaining a gap, but he's overrun. Interesting tactic, and I see a lot of herd jerseys coming past. That may have been a deliberate lead out, I'm not sure.
Certainly an idea to try and do, but I think with groups of this size, unless you've got a 15 watt per kilo sprint that you can hold for 30 seconds, it's probably not going to work. But certainly kudos for giving it a go, or for being a really good lead out rider as well. So this front group of C's are 3.5 kilometres in. As with the team time trial, they'll get to a roundabout after about 10 kilometres before heading up towards Titans Grove, which we will see this time. They'll turn right into there before doing a number of rollers before the KOM starts. And then it's not the longest, not the shortest. I think it's, should probably know, but it's probably around about 2.5 kilometres in length. And averages around about 4%. We've just seen someone use their anvil, which probably is no help whatsoever, and probably should have ditched it rather than used it. They're going backwards at the moment, but there we go. Jodie, what are you seeing at the moment?
I'm watching Paul Shade of the Herd of Fighting Frisians. He's currently sitting towards the front of a small peloton, which, looking at the mini-map, there's a couple of groups ahead of them, 3 groups maybe ahead of them. He's pushing 2.5 watts per kilo, doing about 250 watts at the moment. He's in a group with several other herd riders. I'm not sure who Ronan, the herd, is, the Irish rider, which team he's in, because he's just got herd after his name. And then we've got M. McCarthy as well, in the same group, and A. Fleming. So yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 herd riders in this team.
Ronan is slippery seahorses,
right,
I believe.
Okay.
We've seen a bunch more anvils being thrown down, which is obviously quite questionable, as the last thing you really want to be doing is increasing your weight on the flats without increasing your power. It'll just make you go a bit more slowly. Definitely.
Maybe they think that dragging the anvil around with them is going to make them heavier. That was
Who knows? Who knows is all I can say to that. But yeah, they're definitely ditching it. But maybe they don't realise you can actually ditch your power up without having to use it. But anyway, we're 5.5k through in the sea race. Just going towards the waterfalls. I know we've just gone through the waterfall, I think. And And Nathan has decided to use the anvil as well. Maybe he was trying to drop it and hit the wrong button, but who knows?
Well, there is a -2% slope right there, James. I think he's trying to take
is
advantage.
very true. I don't think it'll last 30 seconds though.
It does not.
And he's finding himself towards the back of the group. Maybe he's just trying to lull them into a false sense of security. Who knows? But the anvil has now been used and it is gone. And Nate is happily at the back of his group. Group is 50 strong. It'll stay like this until we get past the roundabout to the little climb, and then we expect it to thin out a little bit more once we hit the KOM itself. Zoe.
So I've moved over to Jay Mayeb. That's actually his name. I've not just gone with his initial. He's Jay. He's the herd of fighting Frisians in the D's, and he's having to work very, very hard now because he decided not to contest the sprint, which is perfectly reasonable. If you don't think you're going to get in the top 10 or get in the top 10 time, then you don't need to sprint. But if you don't cover the sprint, you can get a gap in front of you, which is what's happened to Jay, and he's having to put out more watts than almost everybody else in the race at the moment to just try to hold the gap to the front group at 5 seconds. And this could get to be a very long and slightly painful race if you drop off at this point. And it's so easy to do. Often with sprints, you're at split-second decisions, and even if you're not trying to win the sprint, it can ruin your race. Just that little mistake.
Yeah, I think that even if you're not contesting the sprint, you definitely have to put out more watts just to try and stay with the group, because there'll definitely be quite a few riders in there who are contesting it, and it'll naturally increase the pace there. So it's definitely not what you want to be doing at the start of a race, to have to try and chase back down the front group. And I'd say it's probably a bit of a forlorn hope. I'm just looking at the timing screens at the moment. They're 7 seconds back, and I don't think they'll be seeing the front again unless they're able to do something quite special. So mentality, after 10 minutes are 7.5k through, we'll start to see our first climb in around about 2.5 kilometers before things start to get a little bit more bumpy. Jodie, who are you watching at the moment?
I'm watching Nick Sesh of Herd of Fighting Frisians, and he has the very interesting profile picture on his... Oh, it's a she. That's why it's an interesting profile picture. But I don't believe it's her. It's very 1980s, very sort of 1980s aerobics instructor picture slash sort of Wonder Woman-esque. You gotta go and look at her profile picture. It's fabulous. She's currently sitting at the front of the group at the moment at 5.9 kilometers into the ride. She's doing about 37 kilometers an hour and pushing 2.5 watts per kilo. 185 watts at the minute. She's doing pretty well. She's just sort of, I think, just keeping towards the front of the group, just allowing a couple of others to get ahead of her at the moment. We're just coming round the bend. There's 3 riders ahead in a small group ahead, so I think probably this group trying to push around the bend to catch these 3 up. I believe there are no herd riders in that mini group ahead. It's all the herd riders are in this group that I'm watching. We've got 5 of them staying together, and the little mini group ahead is about 3 seconds, so it's more than doable that they can catch them up because they're in a much larger group. So let's see if they can do this and push on a little bit. Yeah, they're closing the gap now. They're 2 seconds behind.
So just some figures on the Titans Grove KOM. It's actually even more shallow than I thought it might have been over the course of the whole climb. The average grade is 2.2%. It's 2.61 kilometres in length, and the first half is definitely very shallow before we do some switchbacks where it'll kick up to a maximum of 7. The front of the seas are now through 9 kilometres, and they are just about to get up to around about before we see our first meaningful ramp of the race so far, where it'll kick up to max of 4 or 5%. So nothing too strenuous, but the wattages will definitely bump up there as everyone makes certain they're able to stay in the front. So we might see a couple of people get dropped off the back, but probably not that many at this stage. But then we'll head into the rollers, where it can certainly be a bit more difficult to stay in the group, just down to the nature of the up and down and trainer delays, and you certainly have to know when to push power down at the right times. Isn't that right, Zoe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a large group, it's hard for it to split apart on that. But as the groups get smaller, which is what happened yesterday on the com, the C race really fractured. I'd expect the D groups to do the same on the com. So the second time round, if you're trying to stay with a little group, you're probably going to have to work those rollers. And there were rollers on both sides of the com. You're probably going to have to work them pretty well. And if you can just do it better than your opponents, you might be able to get a gap.
So it does look like all 6 mentality riders are still in the front group. Now, there's only a dozen riders behind, so that's... but they're all still there as we start to get close to the KOM.
Yeah, we're just kicking up that little ramp after the roundabout now, and there's got a couple have gone off the front. Derry up ahead and G Scott out of one of the Irish teams. Probably more through nerves than anything else. I don't think this is a meaningful attack because I've got a long way to go before we get to any banners. This group is strung out a tiny bit, not much. We've dropped a couple of people off the back, but it's all going to come back pretty soon, I would have thought. Yeah, group is still fairly large. Can't see exactly how many are in there, but it's all very much together at the moment. We are just about to make our right-hand turn into Titans Grove. Got one solo rider off the front still, but I'm not sure how long this is going to last. It's looking like they are definitely closing back down again as we start to hit the rollers. Jodie.
Yeah, I'm also watching the front group. I have to say the herd is well represented in this front group. I'm watching Miles Hubbard of the herd of slippery seahorses. He's from Guyana, his flag, age 35. He's somewhere mid-pack, I believe, and doing 41 kilometres an hour. I've just got the aerial view, so I'm just watching everybody mingling around. There are a couple of herd riders right towards the front. 2 at the front there. Who's wearing orange caps tonight? Do we know? Because we've got 2 wearing orange caps at the front.
I believe that is the herd of Fighting Frisian.
Right, so we've got a couple there, but let's change the view a little bit. So back to watching Miles. He's sitting towards back now, just taking it easy. Just coming to a left-hand bend.
We have a rider who is using the anvil in the rolling section, so they're now going uphill and they're 10% heavier for 30 seconds, which probably won't help, and then we go downhill where it will help. So interesting choice of power up selection there. We're now just into the misty part of Titans, and once the mist lifts, we very shortly start the KOM. I'm not expecting too much activity at the very, very start of the KOM. It'll certainly be on the switchback section where things will start to get split a little bit more, and with just pulled back that solo rider who went off the front on the climb after a roundabout. 12.5k through means we have about 30 still to go. We'll be looking at finishing times in the region of 1 hour 8 to 1 hour 10, I believe, maybe fractionally quicker, or depending on how quickly the riders go in between the prime segments. But we have just hit the start of the KOM. It ramps up to 4% very briefly before flattening out again as a tiny little bit of downhill, and then we'll head towards the switchbacks where we'll see gradients increase up to a maximum of 7%. Zoe.
So I'm with Dan Gibbison of the herd of charging coursers in the front of the D-Race. They've just turned into Titans Grove and are still, there's a big group at the front. It looks like there's 25 riders, maybe 30 riders in the front of this group. I think 25-ish. He's tucked in quite nicely. He did stick his nose in the wind for a second or two, but then realised it was a bad idea and dropped back. That's very pleasing. But yeah, they're just coming over the rollers. There's a big herd presence at the front here. And in case anyone doesn't know, by the way, a courser is a horse. It is a horse that was very popular in the Middle Ages for knights and jousting, and so it's entirely appropriate that they charge, unlike the herd of aggressive cows, which less sure that cows are very good at fighting. But nonetheless, the fighting Frisians are still doing very well.
Very good. And still just following this C group, Nathan's mid-pack at the moment before things start to kick a little bit more up front. We are just heading towards those switchbacks I mentioned earlier on, where we'll start to see the number of watts go up. Nathan's currently doing just under 4 watts a kilo, so the pace is already kicking up quite a bit so far, as the gradient increases to 4%. And we've probably got about another, I'd say, 4 minutes of this climb, maybe slightly under, but the fun is about to get started. Jodie, you're also watching the front group on C's, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I'm watching now Eric Newett from America. They're now at 12.1 kilometres, and they're just sort of heading down that 1.2 kilometre of sort of descending ramps. So if you're a lighter rider on this stretch, it's one of those areas where you have to really push hard, going downhill and going back uphill. Oh, somebody's just dropped an aero helmet on the way down. Now at the front, I think that's a herd rider that's just dropped that aero helmet.
It was Dan Gibbison, who I'm watching.
Right, okay.
I think
and
that could
a
only
couple
have
of
been an
anvil. Yeah, we've got a couple of anvils. Maybe he thought he'd got an anvil because there's a couple of anvils just being dropped towards the mid area of the pack.
Always good to drop your anvil at the start of a com.
It does seem an odd
Yeah,
choice,
there was a little
doesn't it?
descent there, though. They were on a descent.
Pace is definitely ramping up here now. Nate's falling a little bit behind, so hopefully he can put out some big numbers on the last bit of this KOM. Trying to see who is up front, but failing at the moment. But we've just got one more switchback to do, and then the gradient will flatten down a little bit for the push to the line. Nate's going to have to get a little bit of a move on here, otherwise he could end up being gapped a little bit, but we'll just see how this goes. He's currently sat in 31st place out of a total starters of 62. He's still putting down mid to high threes in terms of power. But this group has been very, very, very well strung out, and not looking like he'll be picking up any points on this part of the route. But hopefully he doesn't get dropped too much by the little groups that are forming in front at the moment. So he's definitely going to have to push. He's pushing 400 watts a moment. And we are about 400 meters away from the KOM banner, but it's
So
very,
Matthew
very
Derry
split up at the moment.
James, Matthew Derry of the Mentality attacked and went over the KOM with a several second lead, and Jeff Sean Fogenberg and Jeff Pearson, Gino Conti. There's lots of the herd in the front group still, so it's still looking good.
Super job to those guys, especially Matt Derry. Nice to see a little bit of panache, which I'm fairly certain Steve Pritchard would be very, very happy to hear about. Nathan's got his work cut out now to try and get anywhere back near that group. So I think I'm going to switch to Matt Derry and see how he gets on for the remainder of this race.
4:19 up that com is a really good time for the series. That's a really good effort. So I'm still watching Dan, who is sitting on he's about 16th wheel. The D groups have strung out a little bit. There's 2 off the front with an attack, but the rest are all in a nice line. I'm not entirely certain why on climbs you always end up stringing out into a line, but nonetheless you always end up stringing out into a line. The conga line it's sometimes called. And yeah, even on a relatively slight incline, this is 3% as they come through the hairpins. You still get that lining up effect.
Yeah, so just swapping out to the front here, it's looking like we've got a group of 14, 15 riders. Matt Derry's still in there. He's just dropping off the back wheel a tiny bit. He's putting down big numbers to make sure he gets back on again. So doing great, and obviously taking maximum points over the first climb, and he's well back into the group now. So we've got back into the rolling section of this route before we head back towards the desert. Jodie.
Yeah, I'm watching Anne Fleming of the herd of charging courses. She's just on a 3% climb at the moment. At about 13.9 kilometers. She's sitting in I think she's quite a way back. I'm trying to figure out how far back actually. There seems to be lots of, I think the first group looks like it's snaked out a lot. And then there are 3 other groups ahead of her. So I mean she's in a quite a large group of people here at 14 kilometers. Several herd riders sitting with her. Em McCarthy, one of her teammates, is also just sitting behind her. So she looks like she's giving him her wheel. And we're just sort of heading up the King of the Mountain, up Titan's Grove. So yeah. There's spreading out a lot here. There's quite a big gap between Anne and the person in front of people in front. 3 seconds between her and 4 seconds, sorry, between her and the leader of the group now. So she needs to try and push as hard as she can to try and hang on to these group leaders. They seem to be just spreading out, smearing. I don't know whether she's got a feather or anything she can use. It'd be good to drop right now because she's on 4%. She looks like she's tiring. Her teammate McCarthy's just overtaken her. What's happening with you?
Oh, I was just going to say, Matt Derry's still doing a great job in the main pack. With we are almost back onto the desert section, and at which point we will head towards the start of the second of our 2 laps. 19k through now, we're through 27 minutes, pace is still pretty fast. We'll head towards the second of our 3 sprints, starting 500 metres before the lap banner. We'll see, because these guys have all pushed out pretty big numbers over the first KOM. Be interesting to see what we've got left in terms of a sprint. I think that the numbers will certainly be down quite a bit on the lead-in sprint that we saw just over 20 minutes ago. Zoe. Zoe, what are you seeing at the moment?
Zoe's just having an issue at the moment. I can see that she's just had to have a look at her internet connection, I believe. So and sort that out. That's probably why you can't hear her.
Hopefully she'll be back very shortly. Craig, what are you saying?
So right now it's so I see. So that's Hubbard. Miles Hubbard is in the front group of the D's. It's split out quite a bit. It looks like a group of about 10 has gotten a 10 to 15 second lead, and so that's one herd rider there, and we've got Sam Brooker of the herd of slippery seahorses and Eric Newert of the charging coursers are just a few seconds back, and there's another group of herd riders with Durrell of the Fighting Frisians, Kevin of the Seahorses, and Dan Giberson also of the charging coursers. So that looks like that group, there's only about a 10-second spread, could very well come together before the end of the rollers here.
Yeah, I'm just watching Dan Giberson at the moment, actually, who is on his own. He's 5 seconds behind another 2 riders, just on his way downhill. He's just now back uphill on the rollers. He's pushing hard, trying to catch up, but you can just see the other riders ahead in the distance, and he is going to have to push really hard to catch those guys.
Yeah, I think realistically, with certainly the flatter sections of this race, once you've been dropped, it's going to be an awfully hard battle to get back in again.
He's still on. He's still on the rollers, so he's depending on how much he weighs, he might have a chance if he pushes on the downhill if he's a heavy guy. Well, the rollers catch everybody out, don't they? Heavy guys struggle on the uphill bit but are good on the downhill. Lightweights like me, I struggle on the downhill to keep up with the heavy. I fly up the hills, so they're a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging to stay in the in the group on the rolling sections, that's for certain. Just in terms of the front of this C group, we are very shortly coming up to our second sprint of the day. Still well represented at the front. I can see Sean, I think it's Gio, Matt's in here as well. I can see Jeff. So hopefully we're going to see some big numbers ploughed down relatively shortly. We're just coming up to just about to exit the mini loop before we see the start of the 500 meter sprint. So we'll just hang with this for a little bit. Pace has definitely softened in between, but Matt Darry's gone for it again. Is this a lead out, or is he making an attack for the sprint points? He's gone very early, even before the start of the sprint, holding around about 7 watts a kilo. It's opened up a second on the riders behind, still holding 700 watts. This is a fantastic attack. 8 watts a kilo. Gap behind is 2 seconds, more than halfway through the sprint now. Everyone behind is trying to push really, really hard, but he could actually hold this. He's still holding 7 to 800 watts. Gap is now down to 1 second. 15 meters behind, 14, 13. He's got it. Another fantastic result for Matt. So he's won the KOM. He's won the second sprint as well. So super job there. See, Sean Fagenberg was just behind as well. So hopefully Matt's got enough left just to hang in this group. But super job on the second sprint. Zoe.
So I'm watching Miles Hubbard of the herd Slippery Seahorses. I believe seahorses are slippery. It seems like a good adjective there. He's right in the front group, which is now 9 strong, I think, because Sam Brooker is another herd rider who is 10th, and he's 13 seconds back all by himself. So Miles is, I believe, the furthest forward herd rider in the front group of the D's. Doing quite well. The D race really fractured on over the top of the column. They were together most of the way up the column, and then just over the top it all fell to pieces. And we've got a front group of 9 now, and they're pushing, just under 2 watts per kilo on average as they go through the desert now.
Yeah, it looks like we've dropped 1 or 2 riders off the back of this main group. Although, no, it looks like they're coming back again. So we've got 1 off the front. I suspect that's going to be pulled back in very, very quickly on the flat section of this race. So still quite a reasonably sized front group of, looks to be 15. Got 1 guy 5 seconds behind and pushing out big numbers. Might be a bit of an arse to get back on, depending on what the pace settles down to, but these guys are mainly holding low 2s at the moment, so could well get back on. We'll see how this pans out over the next few kilometres as we head back towards the next KOM in around about 10 kilometres time. Jodie.
I'm watching Newitt of the Herd of Charging courses. He's 21 kilometres, so just about to come up to the sprint shortly. He's in a little group of 3. There are 2 herd riders in this group. The other herd rider is Durrell Ritt of the Herd of Fighting Frisians. That's a cool name, Durrell.
Durrell Ritt.
Durrell. So yeah, he's an American guy at the back, and they're just cruising along, presumably just conserving a little bit of energy until they get to that sprint. There are a couple of riders ahead of them, I can see, just heading round the hairpin bend. They are 3 seconds ahead, so it's possible they could catch them and try and sprint with them. Let's see what's going to happen. They're at 21.8 kilometres at the moment, so just a few hundred metres to the sprint.
So just back to watching Miles Hubbard as the front group of 9 hits the sprint point. This is kind of a pretty good strategy by Sam Brooker to try and stay away from the group behind there. In that gets him the 10th place, which is a point. But we'll see how Miles goes. We're about 200 meters from, and nobody's gone. And Miles takes the lead and starts to sprint first. Get power-ups behind him, but he is wow, that is as he goes over 1200 watts and takes first place on the second sprint. Good job to Miles.
Over 1200 and also over 1300. Wow, those are big numbers. Great effort,
some
Miles.
good numbers here as well. They're on the sprint now. Eric Newitt is leading the sprint, dropped his feather. He's just been overtaken by Io Lawson of the Zero Dark. Io Lawson took the win there, but Eric Newitt came second on that sprint. So they worked hard on that one.
And yet again, we are seeing a bunch of anvils being thrown down for the 10-second descent just after the waterfall. Certainly be some interesting power-up selections so far today, including some anvils on the uphill. But these things are sent to challenge us. We are 26 kilometres through after 37.5 minutes at the front of this C group, which is 20 riders strong. Can see there is the second group on the road is actually chasing. The gap is now down to 15 seconds, and Nate Holmes in that second group on the road. Maybe they'll catch back, which I'd be personally quite surprised by, but probably indicates that the pace in this front group, they are settling in quite nicely before we do the second climb of the day. Zoe.
So I'm still watching Miles at the front of the D race. After that amazing sprint, he's settled in quite nicely. He was just on the front, but I think he's trying to be just sitting on the back of this group. But I think they're all sort of looking at each other a little bit, because Sam Brooker has managed to stay in surprisingly good contact with them. I mean, he's been hovering 6-7 seconds. I think he's now showing us 8 seconds behind. But that's a pretty good effort for all by yourself with a group of 9 in front of you. And if they do continue to sit up and take it easy, which is not an unreasonable choice, given you've got to go up the column again, and then there's an outside chance he might get back on, which would be a phenomenal effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Still keeping an eye on these, the gaps between the front group and the second group on the road at the moment. Looks like it's still coming down. Keeping tabs on Matt Derry, who's obviously had his 2 fantastic prime victories so far. Looks like he doesn't want the group behind to catch, because he's now putting out 3 watts a kilo and heading off the front. He's actually off the front by 6-7 meters from the nearest rider, but I suspect that'll all come back in together, but should also increase the pace on the front. But he's definitely slowed down again now, so maybe just testing to make sure everyone else is paying attention.
So that little attack off the front is a way to get other people to work to make that group go faster. Knowing that Bowser is de-essing that team, I think that may have been the attempt there.
Just to note that Sam Brooker in the Ds he's 1 second off the back now, so I think he's going to get back on. That is a phenomenal effort from being all by yourself and 9 seconds off the back of the group.
Wow.
I just hope he's got some legs left to go up the column again. But that is a really, really, that is so hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking of big efforts, these 2 groups are about to merge. They look to be just a second behind now, and they are all coming back together again. So the front group will be considerably larger. I can't quite see how many are in that group behind, but it looks to be a few. So we'll be back together again before we get to the second KOM, where things will no doubt split up once again. Craig, are you keeping an eye on anyone in particular?
No, I'm trying to keep the cameras on who you're talking about. It does look like that group has come back together now, and that was a little unexpected. Now you'd have to expect that the league group thinks that if they're the ones that went up the KOM fast enough to drop that group the first time, that they're going to be able to do it again. So we'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah, group's looking to be 30 plus now. But yeah, generally, you'd think, as you said, Craig, if the front group had the better times up the KOM first time round, probably hope to be able to hold off the rest to the end of the race. Jodie,
Yeah, I'm just watching Miles Hubbard of the herd of slippery seahorses. He's sitting towards the back of the pack, just coming up to the waterfall at 26 kilometres. Just watched a couple of people just throw down or one person throw down an arrow there. Not quite sure why. There was like a -1% descent, but we're back to 1% now. So maybe they just felt like they needed a bit of a break.
So as much as that arrow helmet is it is more valuable at speed, and you're going fast here, you're also in the draft, and it doesn't make a difference between yourself and other racers. I really think that the riders should be saving that for the decisive or the scoring at the top of the KOM, and hit that on the lead into the KOM as if they're sprinting against anyone else.
Yeah, for sure. I have no idea why that was done. I just assume that it was one of the riders towards the back of the pack, so maybe they just needed a little boost to keep them with the pack, and save a little bit of energy. I've no idea. Maybe it was just a mistake.
This front group in the seas has swelled to 37 riders. We've got Sean and Matt right at the very back of it, just keeping in the draft quite happily as we go past the roundabout, and then we'll have a little ramp of up to 4 to 5%. Could stretch this group out a tiny bit depending on how tired the legs are in there, and then we'll head towards Titans for some more rollers and the KOM itself. Zoe.
So I've dropped back to watch Nikki Sesh and Ronan and Paul Shade, who are all in a nice little group, sitting sort of 30th-ish, starting at 30th-ish in the Ds, going through the desert, pushing up 2 watts per kilo, 1.5 watts per kilo, varying between them. It's when you're in this sort of group, and I mean, there are points, and there are points differentials at 5 position gaps. So at this point on the finish, you get 1 more point for finishing 35th than you do for finishing 36th, and then 1 more point for finishing 40th than you do for 41st, and so forth. But it's a very long ride to be sitting back here. It's really hard work.
So we are just over the little incline after a roundabout, and the group has all stuck together very well. No casualties from that. We'll see if we get any casualties from the rollers. We're 31k in after 3/4 of an hour, and we have around about 12 kilometers to go, including the rollers and the KOMs. So well into the business end of a race, around about 3/4 of the way through, and we'll see how things pan out as we head into Titans, which we are just about to do in about 5 seconds time.
So just a small comment on that group with that Anne Fleming's in. So they were quite a bit back, much further back than they are at the moment. I think that group has hit the KOM extremely hard, or Anne and Nikki at the least. And I think that may be what they were trying to do for fastest time. I don't know whether that's going to have worked for them, but they are working their way up the field as the race goes. And yeah, they're closing in. I think they're kind of swallowing up dropped riders in groups as they go.
Yeah, I'm watching Anne at the same time. I'm watching Anne as well at the minute.
So I've just zipped over to the women's TTT, and the Gen 2 Penguins are just coming into the towards the finish. They've just gone past the start pens, in the lead in to the Fuego Flat Sprint, which is the start-finish banner, and they're going to be coming through in somewhere around an hour and 9 minutes, give or take, which is a pretty good effort, I think, on this TTT.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly one of the longer ones that we have to contend with. We're now back into the misty part of Titans. As I mentioned earlier, once the mist lifts, the KOM starts fairly shortly afterwards. Matt Derry is currently sat at the back of the pack, and going to have to wait and see if we get any more heroics from him. Certainly, obviously, all of us here hope so, because his points tally so far is really quite special. But we'll come back to that shortly. Craig, who are you keeping an eye on right now? Or are you just focusing on all the pictures?
I'm focusing on the pictures for the most part. It does look, though, just kind of little survey of the race for the D's, and there's a kind of the second group has Durrell Ritter and Eric Newert of the various herd teams in it, and they've got a minute from anybody behind them, and they're about 25 seconds behind the front group. So be interesting to see whether that mixes up at all on the KOM, where you start to see things like that. 25 seconds is not so much that's not possible, but it looks like that top 15 is probably pretty locked in with a minute gap.
So just coming back to our questionable uses of power-ups, we've just started the KOM, and just before it started, someone used a feather. So certainly want to be using those on the steeper parts of the KOM, of which the 1% section certainly wasn't that. Matt is now pretty much in the middle of the pack as we start to head towards the switchbacks, which will be the hardest part of this climb. So hopefully we've got some fireworks in a couple of minutes' time. Zoe?
So the Gen 2s, I'm still just watching the end of their TTT. They are just about to go through the archway now, and that will be actually 1:10:35-ish. Yes, 1:10:35, I think. And I think they just caught enough of the BRT team in front of them that they should have beaten them. But we'll see what the results show when the times are actually in.
How about you, Jodie?
I'm watching Miles Hubbard of the Herd of Slippery Seahorses. He's currently just on 3% incline, about 30 and a half kilometres. Sitting in a group with Durrell still. Also, he's of the Herd of Fighting Frisians. He's sitting towards the back of this group. Just taking it easy. Not really pushing too hard. He's doing about 2.7 watts per kilo at the moment. So I think he's just conserving energy at the minute. Sitting on the back. Just letting other people do the hard work for him. We're coming up to the end now of the Col du Saddle Springs incline, so we'll be coming up to the start of the Titans Grove King of the Mountain shortly. Yeah, I don't know whether you can see this, but that sign on the right hand side there, that's the end of the Col du Saddle Springs incline, and signalling the start of the Titans Grove KOM, which starts very shortly.
Yeah, and we're well into that with the front of the seas. Matt is currently sat around about 17th position. looking to see if there are any big attacks on here, but it's still a little bit of a climb to go just yet. Looks like we have one rider up the road. Sadly, I couldn't quite see who that was, but Matt's still putting out some good numbers here, and we do not have far to go. We've got one more switchback, and then it's the quick drag to the line. Matt's certainly he's still putting out 4.5, 5 watts a kilo, and bringing in the rest of this front group. About halfway through to that final switchback, he's now up to 12th place, and pushing through now up to 5th, and still pushing really hard. 5 watts a kilo still. Coming on to the final switchback, before they have the final drag towards the banner. Is in fourth moment. We've got an AHDR rider on front, C. Hagen from ATP in second. Matt's now in third, pushing really hard. May even bring these two back in. He's deployed his aero, pushing 37, 38 kilometers an hour. They will be very shortly able to see the line. Matt is still pushing. He's got a little bit of a sprint going. Now into second, now into first, still pushing towards the line. Looks like he's going to do it again. 600 watts, and over we go. Another prime victory for Matt Derry. Super effort. And just the one sprint to go in the finish line.
And looks like Jeff and Sean of the Mentality were 6th and 7th over the line as well. So,
yep,
excellent.
Absolutely. Things are looking good for Herd Mentality. Reminder, they need to win this race in order to have a chance at winning the title, having come second yesterday with a fantastic team time trial on Out and Back Again. Matt is still first wheel. There's a bunch of riders 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds behind, so this will all come back together fairly quickly. Just depends on how big that group's going to be. I certainly think there won't be any. Once we hit the flat and the groups have been settled, I don't think we'll see a second group on the road catch the front one, because they certainly wouldn't want that with the finish line so close. Zoe.
So I was watching Nate Holm, who went over the com in the seas about sort of 22nd, 23rd. He'd done quite a lot of work, I think, bringing those two groups back together again, and it looks like he's just split again, just a little bit off the back on the com. But still, there's a huge number of Herd Mentality riders in that top section, and that really will help them when it comes to the points totals. These, having 6 team members and having them all score decent finish points makes a huge difference to where you finish.
Yeah, they've also been doing really well on the first over the line segments as well. Sadly, we can't see how they're doing in terms of faster segment times, but I suspect Matt is very high up that list. So this group has come back together a bit. We're looking at probably 20 riders. I think that's probably going to be as many as we'll see. I don't think the group behind is going to get back in, but they are actually pretty close, so it could well happen, in which case it's going to be a bit of a big group sprint at the end of a race, compared to the 20 that's currently in here at the moment. Jodie.
Yeah, I'm still watching Miles, who is now on the Titans Grove King of the Mountain. Just starting to climb. The group snaked out a little bit. Somebody dropped an aero helmet and went like stink off the front of the group. The Welsh guy, I believe it might have been Brian Culliford, he made a break. And there's 2 people now off the front of the group, and Miles is heading the group behind, trying his best to catch up.
So Jodie,
pushing about 200.
Jodie, ahead of those two is Sam Brooker. After that work he made to get back to this group, he has gone off the front on this climb. So and that they're both on that,
That was
herd of slippery seahorses, and this is looking very exciting.
Was that Sam that dropped
No,
the aero helmet?
I'm not sure. I wasn't watching at that instant, but I think that was them trying to get Sam back, because he attacked the group through the rollers before the start of the KO.
Right. Yeah, I can see he is really pushing hard now. He's 17 seconds ahead of Miles.
Back to the front of the C group. We're down to the last 4 kilometres of this race, and it is a group of about 20, maybe a few more actually. But yeah, about 4K to go. We're just starting to reach the end of the rolling section, and we probably have about 6 minutes to go until the end of this race, so not far to go at all. Zoe?
So I was just watching Dan Gibbison again, and he's sitting in 20th of the D race, just in a sort of group behind a pair, which includes Kevin Old of the Seahorses, the Slippery Seahorses, who must be sitting around sort of 18th-ish, and they're both doing pretty well, I think. This is a big field in the D race, and sitting in the top 20 is pretty good effort, just in the sort of second and third groups.
Very good. And we are just about to come up to the intersection. It'll see us turn right back towards Tempest Fugit. We'll get there in about 15-20 seconds time, at which point there'll be just over 2.5 kilometres to go. So this group, I believe, is 22 riders strong. I think I saw from one of Craig's pictures that Sean was sat 22nd wheel, and there wasn't anyone directly behind him. So they have dropped the group behind him, but that'll certainly not catch back by the end of this race. But I think the question everyone wants to know is, does Matt Derry have anything left at all? Are we going to see a killer sprint at the end to take the race win, as well as the primes he's been taking? We're back onto the desert road. We'll shortly be going past the pens, at which point I believe we have around about just over 2 kilometres to go. So pace has been pretty furious, given we're not even at an hour yet, and we're at pretty much bang on 41 kilometres, considering there are 2 KOMs in this route as well. That is a pretty phenomenal pace in the seas. So it's been a very fast race. We're past the pens now, around about 2K to go. So just quickly switch back to Zoe, and then we'll get the end of this race.
I dropped on the seas. I'm watching Matt Derry. So, James, when do you decide how you're going to approach a finish? Because now would be about the time that I would be trying to make a plan. This was particularly after I got caught out on one of the herd beginner racing league things with no plan. Well, I'd had 2 plans, and I tried to do both of them at the same time, and that worked about as well as you'd expect. I was trying to go long and wait for the sprint simultaneously, and I did nothing and rolled over the finish line at the back of the group I was in, which was a bit embarrassing. But you need to have some kind of plan, work out what it is you're going to try and do, and then do it, and don't second guess yourself.
I am probably a terrible person to ask, because the things I do can either go really well or horrendously badly, more often the latter, mainly because I normally pick a spot that I'm going to go, whereas realistically, and Craig's probably got some better insight into this, you really want to be looking at the riders around. If you see someone go and you think you can last that long, to go as hard as you possibly can. But we are just about to approach the mini loop. Craig, do you want to just give us some insight into how you'd approach a sprint?
So, I mean, you're looking at this group of 22. You definitely don't want to be too far back. You kind of want to be in the top third. You don't want to be first wheel putting the most power out, but you don't want to be too far back either. Just looking at the herd riders here, I think Gino looks really interested. and so I don't know, but I don't know who else. And the Italian rider has gone extremely early.
Yeah, this is almost a kilometre out. We're just about to approach the intersection before we turn right to hit the start. So is the rest of this group going to be interested? We've got a couple of riders off the front, definitely pushing up the numbers. Will the rest of them have faith in their ability to be able to do the final 500 metres quickly? Following Matt Derry at the moment in 17th wheel, hits the sprint banner now. Deploys aero, goes for the big numbers, 600, touching 700 watts. Now up into fifth place, looking like the early attack isn't going to work. Matt is now second, going into first. Does anyone have enough to get by him? We've got G. Scott from the Irish team just behind. He's just about to pull alongside. Matt's still pushing really, really hard. It's going to be an absolute dead heat, but I think Matt is just second wheel.
That was an excellent finish, and I think you're probably right, James. But wow, what a finish!
What is this guy doing in Cat C? I don't think he's going to be there for too much longer. Absolutely phenomenal race from Matt. Certainly saw him win the KOM twice and a sprint and finishing second on the line as well. So massive points haul from Matt, and the guys in mentality also pulled out loads of points in the other primes as well. So super finish for C race. How's the D race going?
So right now it looks like Miles Hubbard is sitting in ninth, about 10 seconds back of the rest of the league group, other than Sam Brooker, who is making his absolute best effort at a solo win off an attack before the KOM. So he has 15 seconds on the group. It's going to be a challenge, but that is enough that it's realistic.
I've been watching Sam for a while, and he got a PR in the Titans Grove KOM of 5 minutes and 7 seconds. So that's really well done for a DCAT rider. He's pushing consistently all the way.
Gap is coming down slowly though. He had 15 seconds and now he's got 12, so they are pulling him in.
He had 22, but he's solo rider and they're in a group, so they've got the advantage over him. He's watts per kilo. He's watts per kilo at the moment. He's doing 3.5 to 4 watts per kilo. So just dropped now. He's on a downhill. That's why.
11-second gap with 3 kilometres to go. Can he hold it? It's going to be a tough ask if the group behind starts to get a little bit animated, but we'll certainly see how this one plays out over the next 5 minutes or so.
I think it's a big ask to hold 10 seconds for another 3.5, 4 minutes.
He just needs to hold 1 second or a fraction of a second, doesn't he? Really.
Yeah. The trouble is, once you're caught, you're caught, and then you're going to have to decide that, can you reload again, or have you given it all up on the attack? But he's certainly big points on the KOM first over, and that time's probably going to be reasonably competitive as well. It's hard to know on the second time up. They're usually a lot slower, but that was a big effort.
I've got to say that 10 seconds isn't moving. I mean, it might as we get into the very flat here, but I don't know whether it's a bit of a standoff on who wants to do work, but he's actually pulled another second out, and it's now 11.
This would be a phenomenally stylish win. I mean, like one you could talk about for years afterwards. With
And
let's talk about it.
the group behind doesn't appear to be trying particularly hard to bring it back. They're all looking around about 2 watts a kilo, with Sam doing high twos at the moment. So just over 2 kilometers to go. Could well hold this, and the distance is coming down. The gap's actually gone up to 12 seconds, as I think everyone behind is probably all setting up for the final finish to try and secure second position. So yeah, absolute panache from Sam. This is a monumental effort from such a long way out as well. Around about 2 kilometers to go. Craig, I think he's going to do it.
It does look. This is an excellent effort. No question. I'm very impressed, and the timing.
And he's increasing his gap now to 14 seconds.
Yeah, I think everyone behind's setting up to try and get some recovery before the final sprint. I think he's played this absolutely beautifully. And he's still holding 2.5 watts a kilo. Hopefully he knows he's pretty much got it. That gap's up to 15, and we don't have far to go now at all.
So Sam has catted up this season, I believe. He's now a C, but obviously he's still allowed to compete as a D because he'd completed 4 weeks stroke races, which is the Zwift Racing League rule, that once you've done 4 races in your cat, you are allowed to continue racing. Obviously, the watts per kilo limits for 20-minute efforts still hold, but I don't think now's the right moment to go into all the details of when you get disqualified and when you don't.
No, and it's worth mentioning that there'll be a good number of other riders who have catted up from D to C over the course of this series as well. But now we're down to about 1 kilometre. We've just entered the mini loop. The gap is still 15 seconds, so it's not looking like this is going to come down. So this is a Herculean effort from Sam. Really, really great. And
fact,
Paul Smith's just said on the YouTube channel that looks like the chase has given up. And I certainly agree. They are certainly all holding around 2 watts a kilo. So there's definitely not any big effort behind to try and chase back. So they're all setting up for second place. But Sam has around about 600 meters to go, maybe 700. Not far at all. And it's going to take this at a canter.
So I've got to say, it looks like the gap's going the other direction. In that, so that group behind Sam, the other rider with Miles Hubbard, is closing that gap as opposed to the other, as opposed to going the other way.
Yeah, still looking at 15 seconds as Sam enters the very, very last bit of this. Can see the cavern for the end of the race now. So only about 300 meters to go. Starting to see some power being thrown down behind from H. Walker out the Rhino team, looking to try and go for an early attack to secure second place.
Yeah, there's some big red numbers coming out. J Boom, 9.6 watts per kilo there, and 9.4 now. And A. Tuitman was also pushing hard. They've both got PRs there by the look of it.
Yeah, Sam wins this with a 3-second gap behind. But amazing effort. Really, really, really well done.
And Miles just rolled over in 9th.
Super. Excellent points.
Yeah,
so I think we're probably at the point where we say a big well done to all of our riders. A massive thanks to Craig for supplying us with these excellent pictures yet again. And I believe we had sound throughout the stream, which is also fantastic. Big thanks to Zoe and Jodie also for joining our commentary team this weekend. And a big thanks to everyone for watching. So it's a big thank you and a good night from me.